Heroes Behind the Badge. We tell real stories about real cops. We expose the fake news about the police, and we bring you the real facts. Hi, I'm your host, Dennis Collins. I'm a founding director of Citizens Behind the Badge. I'm a proud law enforcement parent. And this podcast, as always, is brought to you by Citizens Behind the Badge, the leading voice of the American people in support of the men and women of law enforcement. Citizensbehindthebadge.org. You could reach out and get involved with the hundreds of thousands of Americans already lending their support to the police. Citizensbehindthebadge.org. As always, I'm joined by my colleagues, the ever-present William Erfurth, better known as Billy. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good, Dennis. Thank you very much.
Nice to see you. Mr. Erfurth was formerly Lieutenant Erfurth for 26 years, Miami-Dade Police, a highly decorated, thrilling, exciting, and adventurous career. Someday we'll have to do a podcast episode on your career. I don't know if that would make the cut, but and of course, our founder, the CEO and president of Citizens Behind the Badge. You probably know him as the founder and CEO emeritus of the National Law Enforcement Memorial in Washington, D.C., and the Law Enforcement Museum. Of course, none other than Craig Floyd. Hello, Craig.
And it's good to be with you as always. And I'm going to put on my fundraising hat for a moment, like any good CEO of a nonprofit, and just let people know if they like our podcast, they like what we hear, they want to support law enforcement, heroes like our guest here today, they can go to our website, citizensbehindthebadge.org, and there is a donate button. We rely solely on private contributions to fund the work we do in support and in advocacy for law enforcement. So just a little plug there. CEOs of nonprofits can't ever seem to raise enough money to support the good causes, but
well, again,
that's the way people can help.
It's all about advocacy for our law enforcement officers, and Craig wrote the book on this, so it's a good investment. And you can follow us on citizensbehindthebadge.org. Okay. Also, if you like anything you hear today or in any of our podcasts, would you do us a favor? Hit subscribe, hit like, hit follow, or all three. That gives the algorithms the opportunity to say, yeah, there was something important in that. And so if you liked it or find what we have to say here important, please do us that favor. Okay. Today, well, to be blunt, today's guest should not be here. Today, we share a story of survival and grit. Let's go back to November 19th, 2010. The sun has set. It's dark. Brody Young was a Utah State Park ranger patrolling alone in the remote canyons just outside his hometown of Moab, Utah. He stopped at the Poison Spider Mesa trailhead, a popular trail. He stopped at the parking lot to check on a lone vehicle. What happened next would change his life forever. Death visited me, but miracles took place. I can't stay silent about it. 9 bullets, 9 hits, 9 miracles. Do I die or do I get up and fight? All he could think of was his wife and 3 kids. Brody is with us today to tell in his own words this incredible and inspiring story of survival. And it's now Lieutenant Brody Young. He is still serving today as a Utah State Park Ranger. He's a lover of life and all things outdoors. A warm welcome to the Heroes Behind the Badge podcast, Brody Young.
Hello, thank you.
We're so delighted to have you to tell this amazing story. I know you and Bill Erfurth, one of my cohorts, you have a history. You guys know each other, and he knows your story quite well. So let me turn it over to Bill to start today's session.
So Brody, one of my favorite guys, one of my favorite stories that that we've told in the past, and you and I, we did this documentary, Heroes Behind the Badge, Sacrifice and Survival. Your story is truly inspirational, amazing. And as Dennis pointed out at the beginning, uh, shot 9 times, uh, out of radio communication range. All the odds were against you. It was just a crazy, crazy story. But here we are. We're back at it again. You've gone up the ranks. You've written a book that we're going to talk about. And how's life treating you these days?
Well, Bill and everyone, it's 15 more years than I really should have, and I'm forever grateful for that. And life has been, of course, hard and good at the same time. And I think hard things refine us, and I think we have the choice to either succumb to that or take it, embrace the suck, and make life what it is, adjust to the game of life. And it's been a good 15 years, honestly.
Right. So let's go back. Let's go back to how we first met and we reunited, and we brought all the TV cameras and the lighting and put you in front of that camera to tell this incredible story. And this is a story that everybody should hear. Truly a survival story. And there's so much in law enforcement and training about the psychology involved in survival and whatnot. And you embody that truly. So you're out, you're working on your own. As I recall, you are doing your normal patrol, and you're going to this particular trailhead that's very popular, but it's supposed to be closed after dark or after dusk. And go ahead and just talk about what you were doing that day.
Sure, that day and into the evening, I had a chance to earn some overtime. So we had worked the same overtime shift the night before, and it was a youth alcohol overtime grant kind of a shift. So I was looking for parties, I was looking for bonfires, looking for underage drinking, and so on my way out to these party spots, I was checking trailheads to make sure there were no cars in the parking lot. And Poison Spider is one of the most difficult rated trails in the area, and so my idea was to check the parking lot and then move on down the road. And so I went into the parking lot and noticed one car just at the back of the parking lot, lone car, and it was backed up against the cliff. And so I pulled up to it and got out and walked around it, wrote the license plate down, and then as I walked around to the driver's side, I saw a lump in the back seat. So I knocked on the window a few times and woke this gentleman up, and he opened the door. I told him who I was. I asked if he was okay. I said you couldn't camp here. Our conversation was very calm and casual. And then I asked for a name and date of birth. So the name he gave me was Michael Orr. If you recognize that name, it's from the movie Blindside. The movie had just come out, and little did I know I was about to get blindsided. But so I wrote the name down and the fake date of birth, and I asked him to wait there. And I went back to get to my truck radio to, call out this information I just received. And just as I was turning to get in, that's when the shots rang out. First place he shot me was in my left arm, and I'm left-handed, and so it just shattered my humerus, which left this arm really lifeless and useless. And I knew immediately what had happened, and I yelled out, actually, I've been shot. And I turned away from him, and as I turned away, I could just see muzzle flash and him advancing on me. So when I had turned away, he'd shot me 3 more times into the back. And so I turned around to the other side and kind of fell to the ground at that point. One of those 3 rounds that hit my back went through the vest. It was very close grouping, and he was a good shot, to be honest. And I went to the ground, and it was him advancing on me and literally standing almost right over me, just firing away. And through that quick gunfire and him emptying his magazine that he had, he was carrying a Glock 40 caliber um, gun, and he had emptied his rounds. He'd hit me 9 times out of the 15. Well, when he'd emptied his gun, it became silent, and I had this moment You can lay down and die, or you can get up and fight. And I had not trained to die. It was never a thought. What you train, you do. I can't express that enough. And so I got up and did what training taught me to do, which was go for cover. So I went to the back of my truck. He went to the front, and we started playing this cat and mouse game around it. And while we're playing this game, I'm trying to figure out why my left hand won't work. I had a pad, a pen and paper, and a pen in my right hand, and a flashlight, excuse me. And I looked at that and went, "You idiot, drop that stuff and use your other hand." I trained to use my non-dominant hand. And so I crossed through, reached out. At this point, I was at the back of my truck on the right side, and I could see him through my glass. He was in front of my open door on the driver's side. Once I saw his silhouette, I started to fire rounds through my truck, through my cover and concealment. And I'd had unique training to do that the spring before. Where my supervisor and I, my lieutenant at the time, we gathered a bunch of windshields, and we got an old truck, and we'd place officers inside the truck, and they would have to draw and shoot through the glass to get a good sight picture on their target. And that training honestly taught me that I could shoot through. That was my office. It was my own truck. It was my cover and concealment. I'd also had a conversation with my chief the summer before. We were on a river trip. I patrol the rivers a lot in Moab there. And we were talking about the caliber of bullet and what it'll go through in a vehicle and what it wouldn't. And I knew it'd go through everything but the engine block. So these conversations, these little training moments were coming into my mind during this gunfight. It was quite remarkable, but what you train, you do. And so I fired through my truck at him. I was counting my rounds because my reload was going to be unique, doing it non-dominant with a non-dominant hand. And so I figured through that. I released the mag. I put the gun between my legs. I gathered another magazine. I seated it, and then I used my rear bumper to chamber around into the gun, and then I went back into the fight. What you train, you do, right? I fired more rounds, and he retreated in front of his car, and then he raised his hands as I approached him. And it got silent because what do, right? When you see the hands and when he's not a threat anymore, you stop going after that threat. So he raised his hands and he said, "You got me." And then at that point, I think my adrenaline began to run out and I started to go unconscious. But as I went unconscious, I retreated to the back of my truck. I fired more rounds, which I vaguely remember doing, and went unconscious behind my truck. And then he jumped in his vehicle and left. And I went
So
unconscious.
at this point, let me jump in because we've got a video clip that we're going to play right now that reenacts basically what you said. And I want to play that for those of you that are watching. Great. For those of you that are listening, you'll be able to hear him, Brody, narrate this. So let's play that and talk about it.
That's when shots began firing in my direction, hit my left humerus, and just could see more muzzle flash. I began firing through my vehicle.
So that just shows exactly everything you described to us, Brody. And you pass out, and I remember you talking about this, and then I remember that there was a problem with the radio communication. What happens there?
So I was wearing a handheld radio, and when I'd woken up behind the truck, I knew it wouldn't work at the time because of where we were at. So if you can picture this, we're next to the Colorado River. There's canyon, high canyon, red walls, and handheld doesn't work in that area, or it didn't at the time. And so I knew that my only lifeline would be the truck radio. And so being shot 9 times, it was a weird feeling. I'd felt like someone had poured concrete on me. And when I'd woken up, I honestly couldn't move. And then a really remarkable thing happened. I started to see my family in my mind, my wife and my 3 kids at the time, who were 6, 3, and 9 months. And seeing them and knowing that my truck radio was my only way out, that gave me the strength to slowly start rolling towards my truck, towards the truck radio. And so, with gun in hand and my left arm being really life and looseless, I started to roll. I'd roll onto my stomach, take a breath, roll onto my back, and I eventually made it to my rear bumper. I adjusted and then rolled down the left side of my truck to my door. Now, I've always felt like I should keep my truck door open. I've just always had the strong premonition to do so. I've read a lot about officers being trapped in their truck and not being able to get out and moving, because a moving target is harder to hit than a stationary one. But to me, it was heaven sent to have that door open, because I don't think I could have opened it otherwise. And so I braced myself against, the lower frame of my truck and the door, and I was able to reach to my radio, which was really low in my truck, and to grab and to call out for help. And as I laid back down, I could see just black smear over everything. And at that point, reality kind of struck that I was really injured and I was bleeding out pretty bad. But I didn't know what to do after that as I laid down. Here's what I did though. I had read some research on slowing your vitals by controlling your breathing. The article really struck me, and I'd read it years before. And so I just began to focus on my breath. I'd never thought about using a tourniquet. I didn't train for it. What you train, you do. I can't express that enough. But what I did was controlled my breathing, and it gave me the time for officers, or after I'd called out, for people to come and to start giving me aid. And really at that point, it was one breath to the next. I had been shot in my heart had been hit, small intestine. I'm just going to read off the list really quick: colon, right kidney, liver, diaphragm, left lung, spine, pelvis, left humerus, left triceps muscle, right forearm, right femoral nerves, right hip flexor. I was just hurt, and all I could feel, honestly, at that point was the pain in my arm, and that it was getting really hard to breathe.
Crazy, crazy. So, Craig, why don't you jump in? I'm sure you got a couple questions.
Yeah, I mean, the obvious question that I had when I heard this story is what motivated this man to attack you the way he did? I mean, you talked about you woke him up, seemed to have a casual conversation. There wasn't anything out of the ordinary at that point, no reason to be suspicious. And yet all of a sudden you're walking back to your truck and this guy jumps you and starts shooting. I mean, what was his motivation? Did it ever come out?
Not for some time. He was not from the area. I had never met him. He'd never met me. I just happened to be the one to meet him that night. But we found out later, he had left where he was living, in anger, we think. He'd gotten an argument with his mom and just had it. And he'd been to the Moab area before for, Easter Jeep Safari or some other big event. And we think, and this is all, hypothetical, but he'd come down and I think was setting up to either have a suicide by cop situation or to kill one and run out into the desert and disappear. That's all we can surmise. We'll probably never know. But
What happened to him?
he left me and he drove. So he drove away from Moab, which is downriver towards Canyonlands, towards the Schaefer Trail. And where his car ended up was near a place called a potash plant out there that mines salt and other things. And he gone down there, ditched his car, hiked about a mile, and then he had set up in this, I don't know, pile of rocks leaning against each other with some space underneath it. What it looked like to us was to ambush other officers that would be coming after him. For some reason, before the sunrise that next morning, he left a bunch of gear there, a backpack, 22 rifle, food, and left that location and went missing for 5 years. So if you can imagine, the cavalry came, so hundreds, of officers showed up to search the area, but you have to understand this search area was huge and vast and open into what's similar to Canyonlands, national parks, just thousands of caves and cracks that you could hide into. And so hundreds showed up and the search went on for weeks. And then it came to a standstill where he couldn't be found. We had tracking teams track to the backpack from his car that he had ditched. But after that, the trail went cold. And then 5 years later, two local kids, the Shumway brothers, who I've talked about in the book, they had this great plan. They laid out a map and they gridded out areas to search from the backpack location. And at the end of their second day, they find a green bag sticking out, just an unusual place. Now, this is open area. No one's living out here. This is desert. And they find this green bag and they open it, and it turns out there's a gun in it that matches the gun he'd shot me with. And then they were getting excited. Well, they look up a little further and see just a rib bone, white as can be, against the red rock sticking out. And this led to an entrance to a cave. It was really just fallen rock, but a cave and a crack. And at this point, these boys, Caleb and Jerem, they ran back and got the sheriff. And mind you, 5 years later, so it's Christmas Eve. I'm at home. I'm actually making a batch of vanilla to give out to friends, and I get a knock at the door, and it's my lieutenant from that night, and he says, "Hey, come out. I've got some news." And I thought something was going down. This is 5 years later. I'm back in uniform. I thought, here we go. It's time to gear up and go again. And he says, "We found him," and it was just unreal to feel that news. I really think first responders have an ability to, um, you know, delay a sickness or put off the pain and set it aside. And it was just such relief from that news. I actually got really sick after that for a couple of days. It's like I had my guard up during this 5 years, and to have that news was a real relief. Not that he wasn't alive, but that he was found. And so what had happened that night was he crawled into this cave and he laid down and he didn't get back up. Is what it seems like happened. So he had died that night. And
The
when
night
those
of the
boys,
shooting?
yes, the night of the shooting,
Wow.
just from what the evidence shows, he just didn't get back up the next day. There was nothing was disturbed except for the animals that were getting in there and eating his food, and an animal had drugged that rib bone actually out of the cave. And so
Did
something
you
was,
realize that you had hit him multiple times, it seems, and severely injured him?
it's really undetermined. He said, "You got me," and I believed him because he'd stopped coming after me and he'd left. But what it looks like from the evidence and stuff, he had a long sleeve shirt and he had cut the sleeve off and used it as a tourniquet of some sort. And so it's undetermined. There was blood on the floorboard in his car. It could have been a lower extremity wound. We just don't know. But it was an injury enough that led to
And,
the end of his life. So
hey,
So
Brody, I'm a big believer in wearing your bullet-resistant vests. That's something I've been advocating for many, many years, encouraging all officers to wear their vests. It could save your life. Is it fair to say that as he's standing over you, shooting at you at point blank range, hitting you 9 times, that the only reason you were able to survive that shooting and get up and seek cover was because of your bullet resistant vest?
there's no doubt that resistant vest saved my life. Those 3 rounds to my back. So those are the only rounds in the vest, believe it or not. And one of those rounds still sits in the vertebrae in my back today. But so when I was laying down and he was standing over me, a lot of those rounds went up and under the vest and bounced around inside of me.
Hmm.
And honestly, it's impossible to explain scientifically, but those bullets rested in just the right spots. The one in my lung is in the perfect spot. The one that hit my heart, doctors described it like this. As it went up, the chamber of my heart was deflated, and this bullet nicked it and then inflated, and the little frag that was in there pushed out and went in between my heart and esophagus, and then a clot formed, preventing, me from bleeding out. That's a lot of blood that goes through your heart. In fact, all of it. And it's unexplainable. I have a bullet in my hip and shrapnel throughout. I it, it The only way to explain this is I had some help from above, and there's no doubt in my mind. Hence the 9 miracles. I shouldn't be alive, and for reasons that I'm still discovering, I get to enjoy enjoy life. And honestly, can I talk about the man who shot me? I don't never wished death on him. I wish he was alive. I've got a lot of questions, but here's what I do know: when we meet again, I don't think it's going to matter that much, because it would have just been a bad moment in his life, and honestly, a bad moment in mine. But I don't think it's going to matter much, just because I've found true forgiveness, and that was the only way I could move on, was forgiveness, and it's a gift, and it comes from above.
So pretty incredible, Brody. I mean, that whole mindset that you just said is something. I was sitting back just thinking, wow. I want you to tell everybody, just like we told in the documentary, about the next part, about how you survived. So you talked about how you were able to get to that radio, but again, this is part of all these miracles that you talk about. And you were describing that you're in this canyon and the canyon walls, and the radio signal really couldn't get out. Your partner, your nearest backup, from what I remember, was an hour away. Somehow, one of the paramedics was home, as I recall, listening to the police scanner, and was the only one that was able to pick up that signal. Talk about that, and then how it all came together. They came to rescue you off to the hospital, the helicopter trip, everything.
Yeah, no, thanks, Bill. Yeah, radio in that canyon. I wasn't honestly, it wasn't 100% that my truck radio was going to work, but I knew that that was all I had, and so you go for it, right? You
Yeah.
you do what it takes. It reminds me of the Monty Python movie, right? They approach this rabbit, and this rabbit looks harmless, and what's it gonna do? Nibble your bum? Like, and it's gonna bite you at your knees. Like, you're gonna fight, and you're gonna get through whatever it takes. And that was my mindset. I'd read a book on killing. It's by Grossman, and just before this happened, and it taught me about mindset. You can overcome hard things. And honestly, I had a lot of premonitions up to this point. One premonition was, and Bill, we'll get to what you're talking about in a sec, was to get fit, like be consistent. Doctor said, had I not had the girth I had, I would not have made it. So 9 months before, I felt really strongly I should get fit. And all cops, we know this, all first responders, right? Being in physically good shape will help you in your worst moments. It's just what it is. But I felt like I should be fit. So laying on the ground that night after I called out, and laid down, and help arrived, they started cutting off, all my clothes. And once that happened, I really started to bleed out. But I was wearing my favorite stuff that day. It was in the cycle of laundry that I used to feel good in, right? Everything fits right, down to the Under Armour, to my boots and socks. And they were cutting it off. And my thoughts were, man, I'm not getting this stuff back. And I was so disappointed at
Of
that
all
thought,
things, right?
that I wasn't getting those things back. But to me, looking back on that thought, it was honestly like the fight was still there. I was going to live another day. I was going to be able to put the uniform on again at some point. And so they cut those off, and my supervisor, who was a ways off, shows up, and so he went Mach 10 through Moab to get to me, and they're putting me on the gurney. I'm really slippery. They're having a hard time because I'm just covered in my own blood. I'm losing it at this point. They get me on there. They're asking me questions about where he is, what he looks like, who he is. Can you describe him, where he went? And I'm able to consciously spit those things out in the ambulance and on my way to the hospital. That ride to the hospital is about, I'd say, going fast, 12, 15 minutes. And it's a little hospital in Moab at the time. It was actually a legally condemned building. The new hospital was being built. It was about to open, that January. This was November. And so I get wheeled into that hospital room. But as the ambulance pulls up to the ER and they open the doors, no one would tell me this for a while, but kept asking, where was all the blood? I just had to know. But they said when the doors open, the blood just poured out onto the ground, right, into the driveway to the ER there. And they were having a hard time sticking me with no blood in me. They do what's called an IO, and it's an interosseary something medical term wise. I can't pronounce it. But basically, they drill into your bone marrow below your kneecap. And I remember the drilling smelled like the dentist office. But when they started to push fluid into your bone marrow, I screamed out. I'd never felt pain like that. Getting shot 9 times, that was nothing compared to the fluid being pushed into your bone marrow. I thought they were chopping my leg off. I imagined 2 guys with a big saw, and they were just hacking away. It hurt so much, but they got blood into me, thankfully. And with minimal equipment, minimal technology, they bought me 20 minutes so that I could, get shipped off in the helicopter. Just before I got shipped off, my wife shows up, and she whispers in my ear and says, "Hey, Brody, you're finally going to get that helicopter ride that you always wanted." And while it was really comforting to hear her voice, I was just focusing on my breath. It was really hard to breathe at that point. To put Wendy in that state of mind, she got the call at home, and you can imagine that call, right? Your husband's dying. He doesn't look good. You better get to the hospital right now. And so on her drive over, she was just, I don't know, overcome with, he's going to live, were the words she says, and he's going to be okay. So she's the only one in this room in the ER, calm as can be, and hence what she had told me was super comforting. And it's a lot of chaos and a lot of familiar voices in that ER room. And then I went to sleep for 3.5 weeks. And it was a great 3.5 weeks. I don't remember much.
So they
A
put
lot
you
of
into a
rest.
coma, but you took that helicopter ride, and I remember when I spoke to the doctor, they didn't think you were going to survive. They did not think that you would make it on the helicopter, and you had pretty much bled out. From what I understand, there you had lost every pint of blood in your body, maybe give or take 1. And then they pumped more blood into you. They put the blood packs on top of you in the helicopter. Where did they fly you to? Colorado Springs or something like that? It was a bit of a ride.
Yeah, it was so St. Mary's Hospital. It's in Grand Junction, which is about a 40-minute flight,
Oh yeah, that's right.
I believe. Yeah, and the helicopter ride, for some reason, I stabilized mid-flight. But you're right, Bill. They said when I was put on the helicopter in Moab, you have a look, and they've seen the look many times, and I had the look of I wasn't going to make the flight.
Crazy.
Brody, a comment and a question. The comment is, after all of this, shot 9 times, in a coma for a month, you somehow survived. You rehabbed. and you went back on the job. I mean, I assume a lot of people in your position could have easily retired on disability, called it quits. I've had enough of this job that almost cost me my life. But thankfully, people like you, Brody, go back and want to continue to serve and protect. And I admire the hell out of that. My question is this, and it's really asked for all the law enforcement officers out there that are serving, protecting, never knowing when or if something like this might happen to them. What are some of the lessons you learned through this experience that might help others in a similar situation?
Yeah, the first is learn how to triage yourself. Like, I got a tourniquet. I carry it everywhere. I know how to use it with one hand. I know how to use it with both. You just that was a big one. Calling out your location, like even if you're going out into the weeds to take a piss, don't tell dispatch you're taking a piss. Just tell them I'm leaving. I'm gonna be back. That was another thing. And then, man, train to live. I don't think we take enough advantage when we train, when we practice for when it becomes real. Especially as years go by, right? You think, "Oh, I'm skilled. I'm a veteran officer," but honestly, that mindset, I think, is kind of a weakness that we have. Like, every training should be have a rookie-ish kind of a mind. I think that would really help. One
Don't
other
be
thing.
complacent. Yeah.
Yes, yes, don't be complacent. One thing is, your home life. If your home life isn't in order, I don't think your work life can be in order. And
Mm.
we've seen the epidemic, within law enforcement, the high divorce rate, the mental challenges that this, work brings. The average person will experience 5 traumatic events in their lifetime, and we as first responders experience hundreds, and that should not be ignored. So, get off your high horse and get some help. And part of that help is talking about it. We cannot be invincible because we're not anymore. We never have been. And so those things I think have really come to light for me. And
Address your physical health and your mental health. I think that's a great message. You talk about the importance of getting in
yes.
shape physically, but you're talking about getting in shape mentally as well, because it's a very difficult profession. As you say, 400 to 600 traumatic events in a law enforcement officer's life and career. And that takes a toll. So don't be afraid to ask for help. I love that message.
Yes, yes. And socially and spiritually, sometimes we get tainted on because we see the few and the bad in society when the world is actually a really good place and a lot of good things are happening every day.
Mm.
But being in this profession, we see the dark side, and that can taint our view of the people we serve. We need to be more social. We need to be a little more trusting and trust our training and trust that, man, life is still good. And if it isn't for someone out there, if it isn't for you, you don't think life's a good place, it's time to get checked, honestly.
So
Bill,
Brody,
I just
some
want
great,
to turn. I just a quick comment to you, Bill, because
yeah.
I want to throw you a compliment here. You found Brody somehow in your Heroes Behind the Badge documentary work that you did. You produced 2 outstanding documentaries paying tribute to officers who died, but also officers like Brody who survived a tragic event. And I just compliment you on selecting Brody as one of your profiles that really is inspirational. I think what we're talking about here today, his story, truly inspiring, and you were captured in that documentary. I encourage everybody listening to this podcast to go out and find that Heroes Behind the Badge documentary that really has a lot more even vivid descriptions of what happened with Brody and a lot of video footage.
Well, Brody is truly quite the bro, right? So here you are, 20 years on the job, lieutenant now. Not planning on going anywhere anytime soon. Going to continue to work. And amazing sacrifices. I know you've gone around the country. You've talked about this. You've lectured about this. We're going to start talking about your book because, like you said, you were shot 9 times. You have a book called 9 Miracles because it is miraculous. One quick question before we jump into the book, though. So the 2 young brothers, they were just outdoorsy, recreational kind of kids running around the desert out in Utah there. And 5 years later, they find this guy. They find his backpack. They find his remains. Did you ever talk to them about it?
So Christmas Eve, I get the news, right? I went over to their house, you know, later that day, like Christmas Day, to first of all give him a hug and give him a huge, thanks. Like those kids were remarkable, and there's something about this family, the Shumway family. They've found multiple other people. They have this, I don't know, hunch or sort of a gift, like and it's talked about in 9 Miracles, but they just have a knack for finding people, and so it was it was his Christmas break. Caleb was home from school, um, and his brother Sharon was 15 at the time, and he coaxed his brother into it, and they went out and found him, and there was a $30,000 reward which they got, and so glad for them. I think he gave his brother 5 of it, and he was the great planner in it
Yeah,
all. But
crazy.
what they had to earn their own way, for college and stuff, and so for them to get that was just totally awesome.
Now, did you know them before this?
I knew of them a little bit. One had lifeguarded at the pool, and so I knew of them, but I knew their dad more intimately. He worked for Moab PD. He was an investigator,
Oh,
and
okay.
honestly, they had talked about this around the dinner table. Like he's got to be close. He can't be far away, just because it's been 5 years and there's no sign of him. And so they had, I don't know, maybe their dad had been instrumental in just lighting this fire, within them. So,
And they were on a mission. They were on a mission. So grab that book for us. Show us
yes,
this book and tell us about it.
thank you. I just got it, at least a hard copy anyway. I've been working on it for a long time, but this book is kind of a memoir. So how I grew up, I there's a lot of miracles in my life growing up. My mom was a miracle in itself. She was terminally ill and was miraculously healed. And so I've just been exposed to this idea of miracles are real, and we experience little miracles every day. And the book's about that, and about my family, but of course about this incident and overcoming it, and then about the Shumway brothers. But
So hold the book up again and read the cover or everything it says on there
yeah, so 9 Miracles, when bullets can't kill and hope prevails,
by Brody Young
by
and
Brody Young
Austin
and
Murphy.
Austin Murphy. Yeah.
Okay. And it's coming out when?
June 10th, this year,
And how
next
do
month.
people get it?
So if you go to Simon and Schuster, it has all the links there, to Amazon, to Walmart, to Target, to Barnes and Noble, to, a worldwide, kind of a reach. But if you're looking for a good read, I hope you like it. I think this is a good one. And, what we're finding is a real takeaway from the book is forgiveness. Like, if you're holding a grudge, you cannot move on. You can't progress. And so I found forgiveness early on in the hospital. I begged for it. I was full of fear and anxiety when when someone tries to end you, that takes a toll on you, and it was eating at me. And so to gain that forgiveness allowed me to start healing really fast. I only spent 6 weeks in the hospital. 3.5, I was in a coma. I just started to heal really well. Thankfully for the physical preparedness and then family support. I just I just got better fast once I got over the fear and anxiety. And so I hope you enjoy it. It's a good one.
Can't wait to read it.
Yeah, Brody,
Love it.
thank you for joining us today. What a story! I mean, and the behind the story, the stuff we talked about today is really the important stuff. You're an inspiration to all of us, those in law enforcement and those of us who support law enforcement. As you know, I'm not telling you anything. Survival doesn't happen by accident. You credit your training, and rightly so, for helping. But here's what I heard today in your story. It's a combination of things. Yeah, it's your training, but you know what? It's your positive mindset. And that and your courage got you through. And that is a story that we all need to hear. I'm glad you came and shared it today. I'm glad you wrote the book. You are absolutely an inspiration to all of us, and you're a true hero behind the badge. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the Heroes Behind the Badge podcast. We tell real stories about real cops. We expose the fake news about the police, and we give you the real truth. This podcast is brought to you by Citizens Behind the Badge, the leading voice of the American people in support of the men and women of law enforcement. Find out how you can join hundreds of thousands of Americans already lending their support to law enforcement. Citizensbehindthebadge.org. That's citizensbehindthebadge.org. And make sure you check on donate to help us advocate for law enforcement. And don't forget, if you liked anything you heard today, if Brody touched you like he touched all of us, hit follow, hit subscribe, hit like on the app you're using to view this, because there are going to be more stories like this. This is what we do. You'll be the first to know about our next episode. We'll be back soon with more unbelievable stories of true heroes behind the badge. Stay tuned for new episodes of Heroes Behind the Badge.